Alright, in this lesson I want to show you how to do this large-scale smoke, which could be something like a volcano eruption. I'm gonna do it pretty fast. It's pretty simple to set up, so I'm working in metric meters. 1 unit is 1 meter. Let's start by creating a sphere in the middle of our scene. And let's flatten it out, so maybe something like this. And then I would just hold shift and drag and make this one maybe a little bit smaller and put it like over here. And you can copy this one again, and maybe this one can be the largest one, so maybe something like this. And then let's make a Phoenix source and add the first sphere as our source. And we need to animate the outgoing velocity to fluctuate over time to get us these randomized smoke plumes. Otherwise it might look too uniform. So I'm just gonna set auto key and set this to maybe an outgoing velocity of 40 and make a key, and then go maybe 20 frames forward, make this 60, go forward and make it 80. Then you can just go a few frames forward, make it 40 again, just so that there's like this mini blast. Maybe as the volcano is erupting, then I would maybe make it 30 again, and then make it 50. And if you don't want to keep doing this for the entire 500 frames or so, you can just select all the keyframes and hold shift and drag, and it's gonna copy them. And then you can select all of them, hold shift and drag, and you can basically cover your entire timeline. So now as you watch this outgoing velocity number, it keeps fluctuating over time, anywhere between 30 to 80. And that's pretty much all we need. So I'm gonna set the noise to 1 just to randomize it even more. And let's enable RGB and give us maybe like a dark gray, almost pure black smoke for the volcano smoke. And I'm gonna put this source over here, hold shift and drag. And so for the second source, I'm just gonna select the smaller sphere. And with auto key disabled, you can just lower this number and it's gonna lower it everywhere for all of the keyframes. So since this one is smaller, maybe it's just emitting less. And maybe we can give the small one like a lighter color for the smoke, so maybe more like a brighter gray. And then I'm gonna hold shift and drag one more time and select this biggest one, and we can just increase the outgoing velocity by 10 this time. So again, this will make the values larger everywhere, and we can give it almost pure black for the color. So I want to introduce some RGB mixing for the smoke so that not all of the smoke is the same color. So let's make this maybe a value of 3. And now let's just make a standard Phoenix grid. And I'm gonna make it pretty tight around our sources. So maybe just something like this. And let's go into the settings grid. Well, the grid is pretty small, so let's start at 600,000, so 0.8 meters cell size. I'm gonna do gemmed minus on Z, adaptive grid by smoke, 0.01 for threshold with a 5 margin. And again, I'm going fast because we've done all of this a few times already in this course. So I hope that nothing is confusing here. And under dynamics, let's do a smoke buoyancy of 1, just because I want the smoke to be rising pretty fast and sort of roll on itself, getting these nice plumes happening. I would just do a large scale vorticity of the highest value, which is 1. And then you can do PCG symmetric for the conservation with 50 for quality. Everything else can stay where it is. Under preview, as always, let's enable GPU preview. And under output, let's make sure we output RGB and velocity. And one more thing I want to add is a plane force to push the smoke to the right like I do here. So I always like to do something like this to make it look more natural, maybe like it's being pushed by wind. So again, under helpers, and let's do a plane force, rotate it to the side, maybe something like this, and give it a strength of maybe 20 with no drag and no fade start. So with all that in place, let's run the sim and see what we're getting. Alright, so I'm running the sim and everything is looking good. It kind of looks like a big fiery explosion, but we're gonna fix that with the volumetric shader. So under fire, I would just basically play with this curve until you kill off a lot of that fire up top. So you can just maybe drag this and you can lower the fire multiplier as well until you get rid of most of the fire up top and you're only left with the one on the bottom. So I would do maybe even something along these lines like this. This looks pretty good. And if you didn't want any fire, you just wanted large scale smoke, you could just disable the fire from rendering altogether. But I'm gonna leave that for now. And maybe I would just make this fire a bit of that fiery orange. So remember, we're only working with this tiny portion of the graph. So really up here, this is the only thing that really matters right now. So I'm gonna make it a bit more orangey, sort of fiery like a volcano. So maybe something like this. And then let's set the smoke color to set by RGB. And you can see that we do have some of that lighter smoke here mixing with the darker smoke. So if I go earlier into the sim, you can see it beautifully here. So this one's the darkest, this is the lighter one, and this is the lightest one. And this will get you some nice detail, especially later on in the simulation. As they mix together, it's gonna look way nicer than just having one color for the entire smoke. And then you can of course play with the smoke opacity, but I think that this looks pretty good for the opacity. So this is pretty much the setup, guys. It's really simple. It's just a few basic emitters and you can play with the outgoing velocity to get some different looks. And then maybe for my final simulation, I would just increase the resolution from 1 meter to maybe 0.5 meters. So I would start with maybe, you know, almost 3 million cells. That should give me some really nice detail. You can always play with the shader if you want to cut off more of that fire, maybe just have a little tiny bit on the bottom. So maybe even something like this looks pretty nice. And yeah, you can just add some lights, add maybe a V-Ray sun, whatever you would like, and take it from there. So as always, I hope that you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.